Hello everyone, welcome to week 2. This week we're looking at the family context of child development. We're going to begin by looking at a bit of a review of last week's content, as well as talking about the importance of family, some various family structures and the significance of this, as well as family resources and capacity. So last week's lecture, we looked at some research, we looked at some theory, and we looked at some theorists who've been quite prominent within child development literature. A lot of what we looked at last week really focused on the idea that one of the core things for positive child development is to have that secure attachment figure. The idea still stands, and we are looking at the wider family context today. However, I'd also like you to start maybe challenging this idea a little bit, in that a lot of the research since the initial literature that came out around attachment has really looked at what that secure relationship might mean if it isn't a positive relationship. Perhaps if it's a stressful or negative relationship for the child, and it can actually have quite the opposite effect of that positive strong relationship for a child, and have some quite detrimental effects on the child's development and long term. But firstly, we are going to look at the importance of family for children. Again, the literature suggests that the family context is really important for the healthy development of a child, whatever that family context looks like. So we are going to talk a little bit about today about the different structures and ways that families do exist. Some of the key ideas down on this slide are that a family offers a child nurturance, security, identity and connection. Next week we look at the family in the community context, and I think some of these ideas are really correlated as well with the types of things that a child can get from community. Another interesting concept that we will chat briefly about is the importance of children to families themselves. So some ideas that I've popped down here are that children offer families generational continuity and externalization of focus. They quite often offer families or provide families with social emotional stability, as well as economic participation and regulation. I'm sure that you can list many others, or maybe you don't feel that they are that important to families, and that's very valid also. Of course, all of these areas that we talk about, they're not black and white. They're quite grey, in fact, and there are differing opinions and literature about all different perspectives. So what I pop down in lecture is just to get you thinking and as a starting point, and that's where our discussion forums come in as well. Jump on the discussion forum if you do disagree, or if you see something differently, and I think that's where some of the wonderful learning can happen as well. So, I'm terrible at pronouncing theorist names. Malinowski in 1929 came up with this idea of a topology of family, so that being biological, social, and artificial with these subcategories. I'm not sure if this is still really, really relevant. I think that in a lot of ways it can be. I mean, we still have those core genetic and biological connections for families, as well as a lot of social and artificial constructs. So I think we can take some ideas from this, but I also think that families in our current society can look quite different and can perhaps take from this topology in different ways. And an example being that perhaps there is quite a hierarchical structure within one family. However, in another family, it's not apparent at all, and perhaps there's some other things that are apparent in that family that may not be in others. So I think we need to really look at this in quite a fluid way. In terms of family structure, I've listed some, but not all by any means. So if you can think of others that I have missed, mention on the discussion forum, or talk about it in our Adobe session this week. It's like I said, it's not a comprehensive list by any means, but perhaps some of the more prominent or frequent family types and structures within society. Another thing that we're going to look at today is genograms. So I'm not sure if you would have come across these within your coursework so far. I know that in the Bachelor of Social Work we talk about these in sort of first and second year a little bit. We are going to look at them this week though, and in particular your learning activity for this week looks at genograms and the construction of those. So I'll talk a little bit about that soon as well. So a genogram basically is a pictorial display of a person's family relationships using coded symbols. In addition to showing familial connections, it also displays information about the participants or the members that are within the genogram to inform our professional understanding of that family and the family dynamics. So with all things, I think a visual is going to help understand here, but there are some basic genogram symbols that are used to denote people and family structure. So we always universally use a square symbol to represent a male family member and a circle symbol to represent a female, gender unknown as a question mark, and then we get more intricate. So things such as a family pet, maybe a diamond, adopted child, maybe a dashed line, a foster child, maybe a dotted line, pregnancy, a triangle, then we've got miscarriage, abortion, death. So when there's a family member on the genogram who has passed away, we put a cross through. And then we've got some symbols for twins and that sort of thing. At the very base level, you can construct a genogram using just these symbols. I will share an example on the discussion forum of one of these, but we've got a couple in lecture to look at as well. You will find a variance in symbols throughout your sort of genogram journey, I guess. And apart from the standard male-female symbols, I think I've seen each of the other symbols a little bit different. The standardized symbols are the ones that I've sort of or the most popular and generally used ones are the ones that I've included in this lecture, but you will see variants of these. And please let me know if you work somewhere that uses different symbols or you've used different symbols in practice, because it's really interesting and useful, because if we're in the field and we're looking at a genogram that someone else constructed, it'd be great for us to be able to say, okay, yes, I know what that symbol means. The other little trick with genograms as well is that within the shape, so whether it be the square or the circle or the triangle, you can quite often put the person's age. So say male 24, female 38, and that sort of thing. On to the next slide, I've got some of the relationship symbols here as well. So again, this is from McGoldrick and Gearson in 85. So it is sort of the predominant way of doing these relations or just demonstrating these relationships, but again I've seen it differently as well in practice. So generally for a couple who is married, and even here I have some issues in that de facto relationships I would see as equivalent to marriage, and personally I would do them the same as a marriage, but then you've got to think about if someone else is looking at it and what that means as well. So I think there's for our current society and our way of working, and the different relationships that we have in society, I think there needs to probably be some leeway with these symbols. So as you can see from the slide, I'm not going to go through them all, but these are sort of the basic symbols that you can use to demonstrate relationships in your genogram. I like this last one here. I'm just having a chuckle, a love affair. So I wonder how you categorize that. As with all things within our work with clients, I think it is really important to be client directed. So examples sort of off the top of my head, if you were completing a genogram and you knew that the couple had separated, perhaps you may put this dash through. However, if you're working in a really person-centered way and the client's sort of assisting with this genogram and looking at it and working on it with you, and disagrees and says, oh no, I don't want to put separated on there, I would definitely be quite client-led in that situation, and perhaps make a note somewhere else in your case notes where appropriate. There's also emotion. If it wasn't complicated enough, already, for those who are new to genograms, we also have emotional symbols. So these are to demonstrate the nature of the relationship between these participants. So most often, I mean, I try to keep things more simple than not. I tend to use your zigzag line in practice, or the dotted line, or perhaps a double line. And I tend to really stick to only 3 or 4 different types of emotion symbols, because it can get really confusing and really complicated otherwise. So I like to use the double line to show a really close relationship. So if you've got a siblings that are quite close, I do those nice double lines to demonstrate that. I like to use a zigzag line to show anger, aggression, hostility between participants. And the dotted line I like to use to show a bit of a distant relationship or a not so strong relationship. But of course, you can use all of these. If you're a very creative person, go ahead and use many different relationship symbols. And of course, it will depend on the family situation and the family structure as well as to how you use these symbols. So that's all on genograms for now, but I am sure there are 1,000 questions, so please let me know on the forum. Like I said, your learning activity for this week is actually constructing a genogram, which is quite daunting if you haven't done one before. I'm just getting you to do one on a well-known family, or even just a make-believe family that you make up. If you just want to do sort of male, female, married, and then some kids underneath, do that. Give it a go. The point of the exercise isn't to test you, it's to see, just so you can see if you can do it and what it's like and if it's something you'd use in practice. I've found in the past the best way to do these is handwritten. And then just take a photo with your phone and pop it on. But if you're very clever with the computer, please go ahead and do a electronic version. But I'm looking forward to seeing what we come up with, and I will share one as well. A rough one. It'll be handwritten, sorry. So next I just want to talk a little bit about family needs. So earlier in the lecture, we talked about what a family provides for a child. We talked about what a child provides for that family. So I'm going to get myself all confused here. But the families themselves as a unit have needs. So there's internal emotional and social bonds between members. These bonds really build up that trust and reciprocity within the family unit. Members have social or economic worth, facilitates the provision of material need. I'm just stumbling over my words today, sorry. And access to information external to members. And that enables generational acquisition of knowledge. So a little bit of a summary of some of the things we've spoken about today in lecture are that families are structurally important to most societies, but how they're structured is quite diverse. And I think we've only just sort of hit the tip of the iceberg on that one. I mean, it'd be really interesting if we had a discussion in class about the diversity of families just within our own group. So if anyone's happy to share in that way, that would be really interesting. I know that myself, as you all know, I've got 2 small toddlers. I also have a 9-year-old stepdaughter. She has a stepdad and a mum, and children are valuable to families for a number of reasons. Emotional and social connection are important, but so are social biological conventions, so that generational continuity in economics as well. Families are formed for a range of formal and informal biological and social imperatives, but sometimes emerge more loosely for manufactured purposes. So the example there being a cult. And we don't see a lot of that overtly in society, but I'm sure we've all had some sort of experience or knowledge around those, different structures of what family could look like. Finally, as well, genograms are pictorial and diagrammatic tools that represent relationships in a number of ways. And family capacities and resources are interlinked. The more capable families have more resources. So we can discuss that concept a little further as well if you would like. Like I mentioned, we have an Adobe Connect session this week, so please come with any questions or pop them on the forum. Thank you.